All right, so first of all, let's take a look at your stuff here. I'm doing this review for Blue's Clues from Reddit, and the big thing that I see right off the bat is I look at everything from a value standpoint. I just put a black and white filter over things. And the problem you're having is everything kind of is along the same lines. Nothing really stands out. And so that's the first thing that I see. I saw on the previous version here, you did a color palette version of it. So it had like color swatches on the side, which is okay, but you're not really understanding, I think, the idea of color swatching. The thing with color swatches is the way you did it was just kind of dumped in individual color picks. So what you did was chose a color pick here, and you chose, grab a new layer so I don't ruin everything. So you grab the color pick here, and then you grab the second color, and then you grab the third color, and then like those were your colors, and so you tried to color everything with that. And that's not really the way to kind of use color picking. There is the best way to choose color picking is to pick your base tone. So like we would pick our mid tone here, like so, and then what you do is you kind of pick your mid tone like so, and then you need to bring in highlights. So in order to bring in highlights, you're going to pick color choices, and the easiest way to do things is to pick a highlight color. So here we're just going to add in something called like a screen, and then we're going to pick another layer here, and we're going to choose like multiply. And so where's multiply? So with multiply, what we can do is we can choose like our shadow tone, and usually you pick a mid tone, and then your shadow tone is like so, and then you're going to use those colors for highlights and gradients. And so with those two ideas in mind, then your goal is to say, okay, if this is my highlight here, and that's my middle tone, and that's my shadow, then I need a gradient between those. And the easiest way I figured out to do this is literally just go pick the background color as your shadow and the foreground color, and then do this. So we can go like so, and we can go in the gradient, and we're just going to go to classic gradient here, and I'm just going to go basics, and I'm going to drag that like so. In fact, let's change the opacity 100%. So I'm just going to straight drag that down like so, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this down here like this, and then I'm going to pick my highlight. So I'm going to go back and pick my highlight here, and then go back and do my gradient, and my gradient will be the reverse of that. So that is a better way to pick gradients. And then so you can pick anything along this swatch here. So that's a kind of better way to do gradients and such. Okay. So that's kind of the first thing that I would tell you to kind of look at. The second thing we're going to look at is the way our eye flows. So when I look at this, and I'm going to use orange here, like a real bright orange with a heavy red here. Okay, so the thing is, you have to understand how we look at things. So when you're pointing at something, like here, we look this way. When you are pointing towards something, we look this way. When you are pointing towards, when you're standing, you're moving this way. Now, this tree is pulling me off this way. This branch is pulling me over here. This tree is telling me to go this way, and it runs into here, which tells me to kind of look down. So your problem is that everything you're doing is making me look away from that character. Like even the cape flows away from that character. And so these are things that you need to really think about when you start designing. Okay. I need to basically control how I'm looking at things and where I'm looking at things. So right now, even right here, you're creating a tangent that makes me want to go off the page. You should have expanded the canvas or moved the character over or doing things like that. So those are things that you want to definitely pay attention to. The next thing is you want to look at your anatomy. So looking at your anatomy here, I'm going to just use purple just to kind of show it. The problem with your anatomy is you're not understanding foreshortening. And so the reason that is because what's going on is things are flattening out, like your leg here is flattening out. This is not looking very in depth here. And then the whole torso doesn't feel very, very controlled. So the problem with that is that ultimately what's happening is you are running into poor anatomy. And this is just practice. You have to look at real life figures and draw from real life, and it'll slowly come. But a simple way to do things is kind of the Loomis figure method. So what you do is you start with the skull, and I'm gonna mute this here. I'm just gonna pick a new layer, pick a mid-tone gray, drop that gray down so that my purple pops out a little bit more. So here's my purple, right? So this is my figure, and the easiest kind of way to do this is kind of give everything dimension. So you've got kind of the neck here, and then you have to think about where connections are. So right now your neck is connecting basically kind of right where your jaw should be. And so if we kind of fix this, let's put like I always put a little circle under there that gives me an idea. So then we've got a spine like so. So I'm bending the spine, I'm putting hips in, I'm putting shoulders, and in this case we're going with 2 shoulders. So I'm spinning that, and then you need to understand where things are going. So from a design standpoint, like we need to kind of push this forward like so. I'm going to make the arms kind of a little bit, I'm going to change them up a little bit more here so that it feels like it's going a little bit more towards things. And so I'm overlapping them like this, I'm giving it more of that spider look. And then you basically have your kneecap like so, and then you put in your foot. Same thing here. We're going to go over and like so. Okay. So this is my initial structure. So with my initial structure in place, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly start building on that. So how do you build that? You start building in refined points. So if I'm having the torso here, this is my torso with my rib cage like so, and then I'm bringing out pelvis bones, so on and so forth. Like you gotta have your shoulders kind of there, and then I'm building a hip set, which is something like this. Okay, so I'm building out shapes to kind of understand how things are going. First thing I'm going to do is understand where the legs are positioned. So here, if I draw a cylinder like so, that cylinder kind of moves like forward. Now, if I want this straight, that cylinder has to have this same shape. But if I'm moving that so I'm overlapping this, it needs to overlap, and then I'm going to put my kneecap. I usually use for elbows and knees, I usually use blocks. Same thing down here. I'm keeping this straight against the camera, parallel to the camera, so it's got to be parallel to this angle. So again, block knee, and then rounding out the form, so I'm going to have more form. Okay. Same thing here, like back, forward, back with a block in there, and then this is going to come forward, so it's like that. So you have to kind of build up those shapes and understand which direction the limbs are facing, like camera angles and things like that. So like you can overlap this and basically bring that forward, and then this is straight against the camera, so it's more of a block than a tube. Same thing down here. This is coming down here, which is fine, but then this needs to come forward, so I need to overlap. And then with that idea in mind, there's certain things that you want to pay attention to. Those things are, and I'm just going to minimize my graphics here. So those things are the T. So the T is ultimately how things overlap. So for example, here is a T. Here is a T. Here is the T. And like even here will be a T. And so that'll create that overlap feature, and that'll give you more depth as well. So you're missing a lot of that overlap feature in a lot of your drawings. So with that also said, the big thing is, let's go back here, and we need to separate our foreground from our background. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've cut your figure out, and the first thing I need to do is basically separate things so that it makes more sense. The easy way to do this is I'm just going to add a gradient in here. I'm going to pick your kind of a mid-tone shadow color, like so. In fact, I'll go a little bit darker, and I'm going to go a little bit more green. And I'm going to add in the flop of that, and I'm going to add in kind of almost this dark green here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the gradient, and hopefully it's the right direction, wrong direction. There we go. So that's the gradient. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlay that something maybe a little bit more multiply. So, and then lessen the opacity a little bit. But now you can see here that the character pops out a little bit more. Just simply taking that definition and separating these elements, I'm already popping that character out a little bit more. And so with that idea in mind, then I need a light source. And so that's the second part that's really kind of confusing, because you're putting in shadows, but you're not understanding where the shadows are coming from. Up here, there's a shadow up here, there's a shadow here, 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 here. But it's not like you're not giving that sense of like where shadows are coming from. So the easiest way to do this is let's add a new layer over everything. And we're just going to turn that into a multiply. And I'm just going to go in my brush settings here. I'm going to pick the softest round I got. I'm going to make sure I've got a little bit of size here. And then we're going to add in a little bit of a blue shadow. I don't like going saturated, or I don't like going very highlight. So I usually use close to a mid-tone gray. And then we're going to say that our light source is here. So, which is reverse of what I'm looking at, but our light source is there. So let's start adding in where the shadows are. So I'm adding in shadow, shadow, and I can always kind of play around with this, but I'm adding in So I'm adding in these shadows, but then on top of that, I'm going to add in more shadows here, as far as like, I'm going to go real big, and I'm going to be like, okay, this has got a shadow here. Let's add a shadow here. Let's add some shadows there. And I'm going to hit Control R to get my rulers. So I'm pushing the stuff that I don't care about in the background. So like so, and we can add in some branches in the background, like so. Okay, so that's going to help you out from that standpoint. Then I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to go and use screen, and I'm going to use probably a warm light, so mid-tone, again, kind of mid-chroma, and I don't want it super strong, so I'm going to keep it up about a quarter there. And so you can always play with this. But my light now is where things are like shining. So I should have, and this is too bright, but it'll give me kind of the way things, you know, I can get some of the glitter, I can get some of the shadows on the face, I can pop in some highlights here. And again, this is a little bit too bright. We can always lower the opacity a little bit. But the big thing about this is going into here, and then like I can like pop in some more randomness here, you know, a little bit of highlights here, you know, a little bit of highlights there. And so like I'm bringing out some of these shadows, right? Okay, and it doesn't need to be perfect, but you understand that kind of point. Like I need to pull those shadows and those aspects out. Now I know you're cartoon coloring, comic book coloring, if you will. The problem with the comic book coloring is, and it's fine, like if that's just style you're going for, but like the comic books nowadays are using, you know, comic books are a lot more pushed than this. You really have to think of light source. You really have to think of like depth and dynamics and things like that. And so let's add, this is where I'm going to actually begin painting. I'm going to go above my screen here, and I'm going to start picking colors that are in your palette here. And I'm going to add some like, so I'm just going to add some like blocks here so that we don't, like, I don't want to look outside of this. So let's, you know, let's add some and I'm trying to put in some things that kind of drive me back into this character. Okay. And the same thing kind of goes with this, and I'm just kind of painting over things, putting in a little bit of texture. And then my big thing is the cape here. It's really distracting, so I'm going to kind of paint that out for now. So I'm going to paint that. I'm going to put some of this, paint that out like so, paint this out here, and so like that, put that in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change where that is. I'm just going to create a new layer just to make life easier. And I'm going to paint this. Actually, you know what? Makes life simpler. I'm going to just dump that color in there. And then I'm going to go down and grab my character, if I can find it here. And, oops, grab that, go back up. And I'm going to just hit delete this. And I'm going to remove, let's hit delete there. All right. And so then I'm going to pick some of these colors up like so, and then I can pick some of these highlights and kind of bring them in there so that pulls my character back in. And so those are overall things that I would do to kind of improve the drawing, improve the kind of overall presence of the character. All right, I hope that helps. All right, if you like this, hit like and subscribe, and also check out my Patreon. Thanks much. Hope you have a good day.